Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan, and today I want to talk about Spider-Man Far Away From Home. American Ben just did a review on it, and in case you were worried about a post-Tony Stark Marvel Cinematic Universe, don't. Marvel continues to refresh and renew their winning superhero film formula with a surprisingly good effect. The main storyline in Spider-Man Far Away From Home follows a high school Euro trip, something that most of us can relate to. Although my high school didn't go to Europe. We went to medieval times, which I guess is kind of like Europe. But besides the summer romances and lighthearted humor, there is one character in this movie that is almost perfect for the times we're living in right now. Now, before we go ahead with this video, there will be, I guess, spoilers about the film for those of you who aren't familiar with who Mysterio is, which most likely means you aren't enough of a Marvel fan to care if I spoil the plot anyway. For everyone else, we won't actually be going into much story specifics. Again, if you know Mysterio, you probably know what his character is up to. Instead, we'll be looking at why a person with Mysterio's skills and mindset is so relevant today. Now, the Spider-Man franchise has a pretty extensive list of villains, many of whom have been made into live-action characters in the movies. You have the Green Goblin, who's appeared at least twice. We've also had Dr. Octopus, and then there were some lesser-known villains like Electro and the Vulture. While these villains were all quite interesting, they were all pretty straightforward as well in their approach to being a villain. Mysterio, on the other hand, is a master of illusion. In the comics, Mysterio is a failed actor and quite a talented special effects supervisor. In Far Away From Home, he combines his knowledge in entertainment and visual effects with some pretty cool technologies developed right beneath Tony Stark's supervision. Mysterio, at first glance, is almost a perfect satire of what a Marvel superhero should be. He's a selfless soldier who was unable to stop the destruction of his loved ones, so now his only wish is to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen to anyone else. The film does a great job at creating this very trustworthy character, and Jake Gyllenhaal just really comes off as earnest. The only time you notice anything strange about Mysterio is perhaps in that one scene where he stares at Spider-Man's back for just a bit too long while he's turned away. But Gyllenhaal is an actor playing an actor who's playing a hero, which kind of makes the whole plot very, very meta. You see, the world today is a mess, made only more confusing by a massive amount of content and information being shoved in our faces on a daily basis. Technology has made it much easier to create better content at a quicker rate and distribute it to more people than ever. And as consumers on the receiving end of all of this, we are overwhelmed. We become less careful in how we consume because there simply isn't enough time to look at everything in depth. Which is exactly the kind of climate that an individual like Mysterio would excel in. Mysterio is smart, handsome, charismatic, and extremely disciplined. A great actor is not only able to have complete control over their physical appearance, they also have to be extremely hard workers, constantly perfecting their craft, which is usually trying to appear like someone they aren't. It's true that success in most arts depend on luck to some degree. But it's also true that a lot of individuals in the creative industry who have failed aren't the hardest workers or haven't set themselves on the right path. So despite what most people think, you can't just appear on a movie set and all of a sudden become a major star in a movie. Because it doesn't just take natural talent to be a great actor, it also takes years and years of training and practice. And I think it's very important, especially nowadays, for people to understand just how much training these professionals actually have to go under to create their craft. Because then we can also understand how practiced and produced everything is that we see on TV and in movies. The greater the actor, the more natural they are in the role they are portraying, and if we don't respect that and understand that about acting, it's very easy to get duped. Everything from their hand placement, their eyebrow placement, their posture, their clothing is obsessed over, especially at the higher levels. Individuals like Mysterio are professional actors, and as wise of a consumer as you might be, Mysterio spends a lot more time trying to figure out how to grab your attention and keep you interested than you do trying to figure out what exactly his tricks are. This is the relationship we've always had with entertainment, news, and even politicians, but more than ever now, the scales have tipped in favor to the content creators. And that's because content creators are constantly honing their craft and they're really reaching a next level when it comes to creating content. Prior to the Nixon and Kennedy presidential debates, the debates were only held on radio. For the first time, we actually got to see the candidates on TV. And while individuals who listened to the debates on the radio thought that Nixon won, people who saw the debates on TV thought that the younger and more charismatic Kennedy won. And in the primary debates the other day, you can tell that appearance matters almost as much, if not more, than what you say as a politician. And that's because candidates only get about a minute to respond to extremely complicated policy questions that should take hours to explain. So what they say during these debates actually don't really matter as much. Individuals like Joe Biden look presidential, whereas Kamala Harris looks like a tough former prosecutor. Tim Ryan looks like a thumb, kind of, and Marianne Williamson looks like she owns a lot of cats, and that will really affect how they poll. Mysterio, like every news anchor, politician, or actor, seems charming and nice on screen, but the second the camera stops rolling, they drop that facade and the calculations begin and the next show is planned. There's actually one scene in Spider-Man Far Away From Home that I really like, and that's when Mysterio transitions from this fiction version of himself to the real version of himself. You see, before I did YouTube, I worked as a cinematographer, and before that, a news cameraman. It was during these formative times in my life that I realized that actors, politicians, news anchors all have very, very similar skill sets. I worked in New York City, and on a daily basis I met and listened to individuals you might have seen on TV the other night, like Bill de Blasio, Kristen Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and many others. When I met these politicians in real life, I was always impressed with their presence. They seemed very graceful, they had complete control over their physical appearance, something that you only usually see in a well-trained actor while they're in front of the camera. It wasn't just what they said or the cadence and tone of their voice, but they actually had a palpable presence about them that you could feel. And the higher up the ladder you went, the more impressive that aura was. The $1,000 suits, the perfect makeup, the matching tie or pin, it was also perfect and produced, just like Mysterio. Mysterio is a great example of why consumers of media today have to be more vigilant on how they approach consuming content. A person's appearance can be produced and hide their true intentions. And now even their actions, which at one time was relatively hard to disguise, can be faked by deep faking or fake news or fake editing. Mysterio, of course, is the worst case scenario, and we're only beginning to understand just how dangerous that can be for the world. So the next time you think a politician really cares about you or a news anchor really wants to inform you about the truth, think about all the careful planning and production that goes into the delivery of their message. Think about what their motives are, what the influences are behind them, and even then you might still not know what exactly is going on. Because to truly understand or learn about something, it actually does take an enormous amount of time and energy. There really are no shortcuts. Take climate change, for instance. How many of you out there watching this right now have a stance on climate change? How many of you who have a stance on it are climatologists and have taken the time to do the research, find correlations between climate change and human behavior? I'm not saying climate change isn't real. I'm not giving you my opinion on the matter. I'm simply asking you how many of us are actually qualified to understand this issue. And with the complete erosion of journalistic quality and ethics thanks to competition from internet-based sources and disappearing budgets, most individuals who write these articles today are hardly more qualified to talk about climate change than the crazy YouTuber who thinks the government is pumping chemicals into the air with airliners and intentionally causing global warming. So not only did I really enjoy Spider-Man Far Away From Home, I appreciate that Marvel chose Mysterio as Spider-Man's counterpart in this film. I think it's extremely relevant to the world we're living in today. Because there's no bigger threat to a democracy than a confused and deceived voting populace. So guys, I want to hear what your opinions on Mysterio are and what you think of this film. And also, don't forget to check out American Ben's review on Spider-Man. And also, don't forget everything I said about content creators also applies to us here at Generation Films. The good thing is we're just talking about movies and fiction, so it doesn't really matter how truthful we are. Or does it? Anyway, guys, my name is Alan, reminding you life is a movie, and you are the protagonist. Or are you?